So in 10 years, I'm very certain that we will see autonomous trucks alongside our vehicles on the road.
Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to Earthlings 2.0, the show where we imagine how we could be better versions of ourselves and build a collective future we actually want to live in. Today, we are looking under the hood of the world of autonomous vehicles, specifically in trucking. Autonomous trucks are poised to revolutionize the way goods are transported, promising increased efficiency, safety, and sustainability. But just how far has this industry gotten? Our guest today, Joanna Buttler, is the head of autonomous technology at Daimler Trucks. And this is a company that is really on the forefront of autonomous trucking, and she is going to give us all the details. But before we beam her up onto our proverbial spaceship, I'm your host, Lisa Ann Pinkerton. I'm the CEO of the award winning technology PR firm Technica Communications and the founder of Women in Clean Tech and Sustainability. Before building those organizations, I was an award winning environmental science, health, and technology reporter for NPR and PBS. And whether this is your first or 50th time tuning in, thanks, Mom. We are so happy to have you here today. Bringing you these stories is our joy and our creative outlet, and it is a pleasure to bring these stories to you. So please feel free to look around. Listen to a couple of other episodes. We have one specifically just on autonomous vehicles, and the big question there was how safe is enough for these vehicles to be allowed on the road? And just exactly where might we see them first, and what locations might they never be a viable solution. We've also looked at aviation, agriculture, various aspects of carbon markets. So there's a lot to look at in our feed. So feel free to look around. You can join our Substack newsletter and get a digest of what we've got coming up. And you can follow us on our social media feeds. You can even email me at lisaan@earthlingspodcast.com and give me some notes. Get out your red pen and tell me what you think of the show. And if you're in a financial position to support the show, please consider joining our Patreon page. For $5 a month, you will get access to extended interviews and other items that are of benefit to our Patreon members. And thank you to Resource Labs for having us on the network. Like I said, in past shows, we have covered autonomous vehicles specifically related to passenger cars. And today's episode, we're looking at autonomous trucking. Joanna Buttler is our guest from Daimler Trucks. She's been at the company for over 17 years, and she's held a variety of roles before this one, like Director of Autonomous Vehicle Program, the Director of Business Development for that program, as well as the Chief of Staff of Daimler Trucks and Bus. Now she's the head of the Global Autonomous Technology Group. So, to put it mildly, this lady knows her trucks. So let's get right to it. We're going to catch up with Joanna from her office in Portland, Oregon. Give me a little flavor of what it is about autonomous trucking that gets you up every day.
You know, autonomous trucks for me are really the promise of a better future, if you want to summarize that. Why? I truly believe that it will enhance everyone's lives. If you think about the purpose of trucks, trucks move everything. The earrings I'm wearing, your podcast studio, everything that we have, our daily necessities, have been delivered on a truck. So if we can make that delivery and that experience just a little bit better, safer, more reliable, and more predictable, it will ultimately impact all of us, and we will get our goods delivered quicker, safer, and potentially, same-day deliveries is what we all want. Yeah, you mentioned a few of the challenges that trucking currently has, safety and just the required rest periods that drivers have for good reason.
right? We're humans, we need rest. What are some of the other challenges that you're seeing in the trucking space that you anticipate autonomous vehicles will be able to remedy?
Yeah, through the rest periods, right, that are required by law, it also means that you have this great tool, this great asset that cannot run 24/7. So if you have a vehicle that ultimately could be utilized 24/7, it means you can get more out of this asset. And our customers, if you ask them what is one of their pain points, it's exactly that. You have this great 80,000-pound truck that ultimately sits probably 50% of the time. So if you could, instead of parking it, use it around the clock to again deliver our goods and necessities and provide that more predictably and reliably, that is a great benefit that our customers could get from autonomous trucking.
So Daimler Truck has this platform. It's calling the Cascadia, and that is your autonomous truck platform. And you released this at the ACT Expo this past year. Can you describe this for us? What does it look like, and what are its capabilities?
We have our Freightliner Cascadia is pretty much the flagship, even the non-autonomous version. That is the truck that is delivering our goods over the road and has about 50% market share. And now we're taking this platform that our customers are purchasing today, and we're making it what we call autonomous ready, which means we are developing systems that will enable a autonomous driving software to actuate and ultimately steer and brake and accelerate that vehicle. So we are targeting level 4 driving, which means under certain circumstances, you don't necessarily need a driver. And for that purpose, you need a base vehicle, a platform that is safe enough to execute all the commands of a virtual driver. So ultimately the software, the brain that does that driving task on behalf of a human. And that is what we call the autonomous ready Cascadia. And at ACT Expo, we actually revealed a version that is also propulsion agnostic. So it was the first time that we took this, the e-Cascadia, so that is the electric version of our Freightliner Cascadia, and implemented autonomous driving components, hardware, the sensors, the compute, and installed and integrated that in an electric version, because our long-term vision is to have a truck that is not just safer, but also more sustainable, zero emissions, and we can provide this new technology across all platforms, all propulsion solutions, whether it's a diesel, it's a battery electric, or maybe at some point hydrogen propelled vehicles.
This platform is, as you said, autonomous ready. And then you have a partnership with Torque Robotics that is sort of a subsidiary of Daimler Truck, and they're working on the autonomous technology. Is that correct?
Yes, so if you think about it, in order to make autonomous a reality, you need certain pillars. So the first pillar is the autonomous ready vehicle platform. The second pillar is the self-driving software. So again, that logic, the brains that ultimately drives the vehicle. And then the third is the ecosystem that enables autonomy. These are your autonomous enabled hubs that could be customer locations. This is your mission control. So everything that you need around it to ultimately build a full autonomous ecosystem. And Torque Robotics is, yes, as you said, it's an independent subsidiary of Daimler Truck, and they are providing that self-driving software and all the logic behind it to enable self-driving on highway.
So then when you bring all of this together, where is Daimler Truck in the deployment of autonomous trucks? What pilots have you run? How many miles have you tested? Can you give us a flavor of where you are in this process?
Yeah, and I'll take it again in those three pillars. So first of all, the vehicle platform, we are what we call in the C sample phase. So now it gets a little technical, but what it basically means, we're close to series production. We have developed all the redundant systems. That's a redundant braking system, redundant steering system, all those backup systems that are needed when there's no driver in the vehicle. Have started to test it and validate it, and now we're making these components production ready, so they will actually be built off a real production line. We have already started to building the next iteration of test vehicles that we're delivering to Torque on our series production line. So that's the first test whether we are ready to build those in larger quantities. And and we're really executing towards our roadmap on the base vehicle. At the same time, Torque is making great progress in, first of all, specifying and finalizing the autonomous driving hardware. So in order to have a software to see, think, and act, you also need autonomous driving components like the LiDARs and sensors and compute unit. And we are in the final stages of basically specifying and awarding those components that then will work together with the self-driving software that Torque is developing. And a lot of testing has to go into the development and data gathering and really understanding all the driving scenarios that the autonomous driving system has to fulfill, just like a human. So we are accumulating tons and tons of miles here, and we do that with our own test fleet on a test route in New Mexico between Albuquerque and Amarillo, but also closely in collaboration with our own fleet customers, because we really want to understand how does this technology fit into their day-to-day operations, and to move from the theoretical approach of, hey, this will make freight movement more efficient, to can we actually plug those vehicles into their day-to-day operations end to end. And so for that reason, Torque has partnered with some of our largest fleets, and two I can mention. One is Schneider, the other is Sierra England, and running daily routes with them to really understand not just the autonomy over the highway, but also what happens at the ends, right? What happens at their depot, at their terminal? How will these trucks be received? Who do we need at the end of it to ultimately, do the whole drop and hook operation, so then the last mile can be delivered with a human? And how can we slowly improve the efficiency of the actual logistics operations? This is a pretty intricate process, and it's fascinating to learn from our customers. We sometimes don't think about how does, I don't know, my Amazon package arrive at my doorstep. It seems just magically appear. But if you follow the entire chain, it's amazing to see. And any disruption, ultimately disrupts that delivery and can have major impact. So we want to make sure that we really make it better and not add any disruptions into that value chain. And therefore, testing with our customers early on is extremely critical to understand the ecosystem around it.
You can make a perfectly operational autonomous truck, but if it can't interact with the world on a human level, it's not going to be useful, right? So like you said, all of these other systems and logistics, it's fascinating to me, everything that is required to enable autonomous driving writ large, whether it's a truck or a car. So first, I want to assume that these vehicles are going to be electric, but we haven't talked yet about the propulsion system. So what are your plans there with these autonomous trucks?
So as we launch them initially, they will still be diesel-powered vehicles. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the target use case is the long haul. So we're targeting routes that are, 350, 500 miles, or even longer. So up to like a full, fuel length that can be up to 1,000 miles. And just the state of battery technology is not there yet to cover those ranges. And but as we continue to look into what the future holds, there's two things that are happening. First of all, battery technology is evolving further, and we're developing new technologies for longer ranges. Secondly, other technologies will come online. As you may know, we're also looking into hydrogen fuel cell solutions that ultimately will enable zero emissions on the long haul. And then lastly, there's also use cases actually that do not require such long routes, which we're slowly uncovering. That's also why we have this demonstrator, where we see opportunity in the shorter haul, medium haul segment, 200 miles or less, where the e-Cascadia fits perfectly, the version with a 230-mile range. And so I think we're definitely inspired and also aspire zero-emission technology with autonomous driving, but the target use case for the first market launch will still be with diesel technology.
I still assume that there's a driver's seat in the vehicle, even if it is autonomous. And then is the thought that at some point the vehicle is going to reach a place in its journey that it's better for a human to take over and take it, to the last resting place where things can be unloaded and handled?
There's a couple reasons why there's still a driver's seat. So the vehicle might have to be recovered and have to be maneuvered inside the depot, inside the hub by a human. But the idea would be that this, let's call it the autonomous tractor unit, so the power unit, that we want to get on the road as quickly as possible. We don't want to send that to the last mile because there's very high-tech components on that, and the purpose of that autonomous tractor unit is to go driverless over the highway. So the process would look like that. You have an autonomously driverless truck arriving at the customer depot. Then you basically decouple the trailer that goes onto a manually driven unit that goes to its final destination, and then the power unit that has all the autonomous driving technology installed will get the next load hooked onto, and then that goes back onto the highway to its next destination. So you want to keep that asset running in its intended operational design domain as much as possible.
And how do these trucks interact with human drivers? I'm on the road just as a normal person, and I see people driving insanely all the time on the highway. So how do these autonomous trucks adjust to some of the, let's say, inconsiderate drivers that are out there on the road?
So first of all, our ambition is to be the best driver out there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone else is holding themselves to that high standard, and we recognize that. So what is really important is, and that's why you have your perception suite. This is all the sensor, the lidars, the radars, the cameras that can see what is happening in the world and around that vehicle, and then the self-driving software that can make predictions to how a road user is going to react around me. And often this vehicle will be able to see potentially, fast approaching vehicles from behind or congestions further ahead better than a human, because you more or less see, 360 around the vehicle. And you can see even into further distances as well. So, and then through, the learning of and the prediction algorithms, the truck will be able to better predict human behavior, road behavior, and adjust and adapt its driving maneuvers accordingly. Change to the right lane, for example, sooner than potentially a human would be, because we wouldn't realize that someone's approaching fast, and looking further ahead. So making smarter decisions ahead of time, I would say, is really the goal. And then other than that, it should look and feel like a very human-like driving behavior. We also don't want the vehicle to drive too slow, too conservative, because that's also not safe. But, obviously comply with all the traffic laws and be the more safe driver, but also be really forward-looking and anticipating other traffic participants' behavior.
So then my next logical question for you, after understanding, these road conditions and everything, is what are the stages that it needs to go through for it to be allowed to operate commercially in all its capacity?
So when we think about the regulatory landscape today, autonomous driving, the development and the testing is actually allowed in most states. And these are the states that we are targeting for early deployment. How we are actually tackling commercialization and getting there is in phases. Right now, we are in the active development, testing, and validation phase. And then once we are launching, we will be in early deployment phases, and we gradually will expand our route network, starting with an initial route network in the southwestern states, targeting Arizona, Texas, New Mexico, and then gradually expanding throughout the United States. In order to do so, we'll be working with what we call customers that are early adopters, so those larger fleets that are already affine to this technology, that see the benefits of this technology, and working with them today through pilots is actually already preparing us for that commercial launch. Daimler Truck North America and Torque Robotics are targeting a commercial launch in 2027. And along the way, we're obviously validating the hardware, the software, and the entire system, and then working together with all the regulators, the local governments, and of those areas that we are deploying, to really ensuring that they understand how we are releasing this and ultimately supporting us. So having a solid safety validation case is important, and then as we go into the different markets that we are releasing it, really working with the local authorities to create that transparency, trust, and ultimately advocacy for autonomous driving in those regions.
And you mentioned safety, and that's obviously something that autonomous vehicles writ large have an opportunity to improve, because in theory they will drive safer and more predictably than humans will. And at the same time, we know that there's going to be some challenges with that. We've already seen that with other autonomous vehicles just that are being tested right now. So how does Daimler Truck approach its safety protocols, and how does it, what does it see the landscape in related to various safety mechanisms that are in place?
We have very rigorous, let's say, safety protocols, testing and release processes, and it starts with even validating the base vehicle, even without the self-driving software yet, right? So we have to ensure that the redundant systems like the brakes and the steering and all the power generation is already reliable and safe. And then once we have that, then we build the self-driving technology on top, we integrate it, and then that will be validated, tested, and released as in an entire system. And then through the testing, we employ different stages there as well. So we start with closed course testing before we go on any public road, with any new iteration, with any new, let's say, feature expansion that we have. We'll start first in closed course environment before we go on public roads. And today, when we test them on public roads, we always have a safety driver that ultimately can take over if there's any issue. We have a safety engineer in the cab as well that can notice any type of events. And then ultimately, we're working on, fixing and hardening, so to speak, the autonomous driving system and releasing it gradually to the point where we have the entire safety case validated and ready to take the driver, so to speak, out of the vehicle. So there's multiple phases before we get to that stage, and different environments in which we test to be ready to do so.
So I guess I assumed that you'll complete all your testing, and then at some point, do these vehicles have to be approved to operate commercially, or is it just your Daimler Truck's choice as to when you're going to deploy them commercially?
That's exactly how it is. So as of today, there is no regulatory framework that actually governs the certification of an autonomous driving vehicles. And so it's really up to the OEM, so the truck manufacturer and the self-driving software provider, to come up with that safety case, their validation concept, and ultimately having the data ready to present to regulators based on which we decided, or we will decide, to release this vehicle for driverless operations. That, of course, may change in the future as this technology further develops. So it is actually our task, and we have here our own regulatory affairs group that works closely with the governments and the legislators and regulators to, stay close to what potential regulations may come up and what would a good framework look like. But as of today, there is no holistic federal framework available. It's all governed on a state-by-state basis. Some states are more favorable, again, in those areas that we're actually targeting the deployment in, and some states are, more cautious in allowing this technology. So it is really on us to show how we have improved, how we have validated the system to be ready for driverless operations.
And we talked a lot about the United States and the various states that are allowing this autonomous testing. You mentioned you're doing your testing in New Mexico. Do you anticipate that autonomous trucking will make its way outside of the United States and be operational in other parts of the world? And what do you anticipate will happen in the industry?
So the great thing is the autonomous driving vehicle that we're developing here in the US is actually scalable for other markets because we have a common platform. And we are currently looking into markets like Europe, while there's no launch date yet. We see actually some really positive developments in countries like Germany, where in contrast, there is already a regulatory framework available to govern the certification of autonomous vehicles. So slowly, other markets are definitely opening up to autonomous driving. However, the United States, as a first market, are still the most beneficial location for an initial launch. You have long distances, again, favorable framework available, and these large fleet customers that are great to be early adopters for this type of technology. But yeah, certainly in other markets, Europe, Japan, and of course China is also a large market. Autonomous driving is already a topic, and luckily as Daimler Truck, we are a global company and we have a presence in all those markets. And as I said, we have a platform that is scalable, not just from a propulsion perspective, but also from a different vehicle platform perspective.
And when you're looking at the future, 10, 20 years out, how do you anticipate autonomous trucking is going to be operating in the future? What do you expect that we will see and experience?
So in 10 years, I'm very certain that we will see autonomous trucks alongside, our vehicles on the road, and that it will actually feel quite natural for us to see autonomous operations in the commercial vehicle space. To get there, it will definitely be a gradual approach, and we have to ease it in. We have to prove the technology. But 10 years from now, autonomous trucking will be a reality and will make all our lives better.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, Earthlings, for joining us today. We will see you again on another turn of this beautiful blue-green space flower that we call home.